Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to another episode of the Level Up Hour. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV. I am joined by the one and only, the illustrious Langdon White. Langdon, how are you doing today, sir?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I think we have another interesting show today, so that's fun. But yeah, we're doing pretty well. I wore my Octothorpe t-shirt,
Okay.
which, if you are unaware, that is the original name of the hashtag. Because if you look at it, it actually has 8 crosses in it. So the octo and a thorpe is the little
right
XE thing, or plus, I guess.
All right.
So
there's your etymology lesson for today, folks.
Yes, little shout out to the TV show on the CW called The Flash, who has a character. So I used to watch with my son, but there's a character on the show who wears very unusual T-shirts in basically every episode.
Oh, nice.
And this was one of them. And my wife bought it for me as a present one year.
I could do that job.
Yeah, I can wear cool T-shirts.
Just record me wearing cool T-shirts all day. That would work.
It would not surprise me, although I am unaware of its existence entirely, but it would not surprise me if there is not some sort of fan page that is just all of the T-shirts and like where to acquire them. And they're mostly pretty good, so it's nice. worth taking a look. But yeah, so we have we're going to talk about subGUID, sub-GUID, sub-IDs. I don't know how you actually say it. It's one of those.
You pick your poison, right? There's no right or wrong way.
Yeah, I was in like a research call yesterday, and they were talking about basically a jitter inside of the data science work they were working on, and they said the word perturbation, which is PERTURBATION. Okay, which I bet I'll even throw it in the chat so that I can perturbation, which is a word I bet all or many of us have seen before. I don't think I've ever heard it out loud, which I thought was kind of funny. But it's basically like it means like how the fluctuation works, kind of where the fluctuations are.
The action of perturbing. The state of being perturbed. Exactly. Nice. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. A disturbance of motion, course, arrangement, or state of equilibrium.
Oh, there you go. See, finding the definition. It was one of those things where it was a serious throwback to when I was like early college, where I knew a lot of words, primarily because I read a lot. But if you read a lot, you don't always know how to pronounce them. So like K versus key. QUAY really threw me, both that I originally thought it was pronounced quay, because it looks like it is. Then eventually I learned that it's actually pronounced key. Then I met the team who does the product that we ship called that is also pronounced key. So it's all very confusing. But yeah.
Nice.
All right, so there's some etymology and some random pronunciation. Let's hit those slides to get back on track.
Yeah, I was about to say let's get the thing back on the rails here.
It's like it's like the third rail, except I heard a really good quote about that actually. Is like you often will hear people reference don't do that thing because it's like touching the third rail. And I heard kind of a counter to that, which is like, yeah, but that's also where all the power is. And so sometimes that's
amazing.
Yeah, isn't that really
amazing?
So to attribute the quote, it's from the TV show The West Wing.
Okay. Fair enough.
I don't know, season 5, maybe. I think
the fact you even remember that is impressive.
Well, I've been rewatching it actually with my oldest son, who's very into politics. And so my wife and I and he have been rewatching it, and it's like I don't remember like any of the episodes. My wife remembers like every little detail about every episode, and my son's enjoying it, so we keep watching it. But yeah, so attribution. But I thought it was a really good line. But I'm a big fan of Sorkin in general, although I think by that point he was not actually writing.
No.
All right, so slides. Yeah, this is going to be a heavy tangent day. I can feel it already.
Yep.
So the level up hour, that's what we're here for. So a little bit about what we do here. We talk about, generally speaking, we talk about containers and kind of things that are related to containers, as well as like things like orchestration of containers, primarily with a focus on this is why you should get into containers. They're super useful for basically anything you do in technology, and they're basically a nice self-contained little unit to do something in. It was actually really funny when I was preparing for the show yesterday. I tried one of the things that I was trying to figure out in a container, and then I did a different operating system container, and then I was like, I don't know if these containers are actually set up the same way as a virtual machine for this thing. So I actually spun up some virtual machines, and it always kind of bothers me when I have to spin up a virtual machine to test something because it feels like I've dropped the ball somehow. But suffice to say, I use containers for everything and recommend that you should too. So a little bit more about the show. You can find myself on Twitter, Langdon with a 1. You can find Chris with Chris Short with 2 S's right there in the middle. And you can chat with us on our Discord. It's been super quiet lately, but it was pretty busy for a while, and then it's been really quiet lately. So
well, I haven't been dropping the link as much, so maybe let's just do that here now, and
perhaps. I've definitely seen joins, but the chit chat has died down a bit. But you should definitely come and hassle us there. Somebody just said QuickTime in the chat, which scares me.
No, we're talking about pronunciations.
Okay.
Yeah.
QT, yes. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. QT. Yeah, I never really thought about it as QuickTime. I'm pretty sure QT is meant to sound like cutie.
Meant to, but I will never say it that way.
Yeah, not QuickTime, but the
no
framework for drawing stuff. Yeah. So
there's a QT gas station apparently.
Really? I am unaware
about that one.
It was funny. I saw an article the other day about how some like gas station chain was kind of coming into the South from like Texas or something. I want to say it was called like beaver or something. It was something like some small animal. I thought it was beaver, but I was like, I went and read the article because I was like, I don't know. I don't even vaguely understand what this thing is about from reading the headline, because I'd never heard of this particular convenience store, which was funny just because, I know Wawa, even though we don't have those here, and what was the other one? The other big one. There's another one that people like swear by, and we have like Cumberland Farms. Bucky's, that's what it was. It's
got a beaver logo.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, right. So
that's like 7 tangents in 8 minutes.
I know, so I'm doing well.
And then there's sheets. Right. Yes, there's sheets, which I'm familiar with as I used to live in the South. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, actually, I remember that one. That's funny. Okay, so you can find out more information about the show at red.ht/leveluphour. And then this is episode 36, and we're going to talk about subordinate user IDs. It's a little broader than that, but it seemed like good shorthand. And the notes from last time are at episode 35. And in a minute, we'll mention that a little bit more just because it's funny. And I think that's the last of our slides before we get to the points. So we're going to stop there. So today we are going to talk about user IDs. Okay, so and kind of to head back to the basics a little bit. As many of you may or may not know, one of the defining kind of characteristics of Linux, and by extension Unix, is that it's kind of a loose term, but like everything is a file. Okay. And everything is a file. So like a socket's a file, your USB drive is a file, everything is a file. And what that does is simplifies the operating system and how it works in a lot of different ways. I'm not sure what originally kind of caused the designers or whatever and of Unix to kind of latch onto that. But everything's a file. This is majorly distinct from Windows, where different types have or different things have very different types. So if you are a longtime Windows user, you may recall that a symlink and a shortcut are very different, because a shortcut in Windows land is a very unique, weird little thing, whereas a symlink is just another file. So you have all these different types of things. Arguably, when you have lots of different types of things, you can make each of those individual things perform differently under different conditions, right? So you can say, a shortcut will do things slightly differently, maybe, but with a symlink, for example, that's much harder because it's just a file, right?
Right.
So there may be good reasons and bad reasons, but it is a very major distinction between the two. And so if you are very familiar with Windows and you come over to Linux, it's something that you really need to learn, because it can be really confusing about why, why everything is a file. So that's kind of the first step of the conversation. Next, what we talk about is, okay, now we want to defend one file kind of from another, or like one user from another user. And so what was done was, there is this user concept, and each user has access to files, right? And so because everything's a file, it's very consistent. However, different users obviously can only access different files. And then you have kind of three major categories of file security, right? You have the ownership is by user, by group, and what's called world. And so if a file is set correctly, only yourself can see it, only your group can see it. And then a group, basically, just by way of kind of finishing the explanation, a group is just exactly what it sounds like, a group of users.
Is this why you were complaining about Linux groups the other day?
No, actually.
Okay, never mind.
No, it's kind of funny though. Actually, I should bring that up because it drives me crazy. No, but I will be complaining about the nobody user in a minute.
Oh, please do.
So groups, they really in some ways feel a little bit like an afterthought. But it's kind of one of those things where we see in the software world, or in the computer world, kind of more broadly, sometimes it's a little hard to tell whether something is there by design or it just kind of evolved that way. And so, and because the industry has been changing so fast, it makes it extra difficult. So one of my complaints about groups, for example, and I'm sure anybody who's done any Linux administration will have this pain, which is that if you put a user in a group, that user has to completely log out and log in again before they get the group back. Right. And so you can sometimes short circuit this. So particularly, as when you're kind of administering your own user by essentially just running bash again. But if you are in most desktop environments, so like GNOME or KDE or whatever, this doesn't work. So even if I am in a terminal window and I run bash, it will not reset my groups to the new set. So does sourcing the profile work? I don't think that does.
Not in like a GUI,
no, right.
Like,
so
if you're
if
in
you're
like
just
GNOME
in
or
a
KDE
terminal,
or whatever,
right.
Yeah, like you have to log out and log back in. Where yes, you can do like SSH localhost or bash, or just run a new session of your shell and you'll have everything right there. But essentially, you're now running two processes to do the same thing.
Exactly. And so that's exactly it. And so it's a real pain in the butt, especially. And what happened to me the other day was I was setting up, I can't remember what I was setting up now, but I was using Ansible to put a user in a group, and I did it wrong, and I made it their only group. So I took away their other groups instead of doing an additional group.
Yeah. You forgot to do append.
Right.
equals,
And
yes.
I didn't notice at first because that user was who I was logged in as. And because I was logged in as that user, it wasn't changing the groups. And so, so I ended up borking the user and having to like rebuild it. And so I was angry and complaining to the rest of the team about why are groups such a pain in the butt. So, long story short, and so Rex Roof makes the point. If I change my users groups, I just reboot. So that's the thing, right? Is
if you're on a big server with a lot of users or running your application, that isn't really
exactly
going to be possible every time.
Reboot is not pretty.
No.
Even if you're the single user on a proper like data center server,
Yeah,
that's a 10-minute operation.
right. Like if I restart the cluster in my basement, it's 5-10 minutes before that thing will come back up.
Right. And that's wicked fast compared to 10
right,
years.
Because it's just me. Yeah.
Right.
It used to be.
Well, yeah, even on
I'm gonna go make a cup of coffee.
Right.
Drink it and then come back. Yeah.
Yes, to JP Dane's point, never reboot. This isn't Windows. Which I don't know, like some of the GNOME choices over the past recent years, I find very odd in this regard because they've actually set it up so that the expectation is that you reboot every time you do any sort of upgrade, which is just kind of like the opposite of what you expect from a Linux kind of distribution. Right. So, long story short, there, I didn't want to reboot because I had a million windows open and I was kind of in the middle of something, but I needed to be in this group for whatever it was to happen, and then I ended up actually borking the user. It was this whole thing. So suffice to say, as of Memorial Day, my primary, my as they refer to in the phone world, my daily driver, it has been upgraded to Fedora 34 because I ended up just wiping the entire machine.
Oh, Lord.
Well, I somehow it was all about virtualization, so it was all about and I somehow broke it badly.
Wow.
It was badly enough that my kind of quick and dirty fixes weren't sufficient. So I was just like, whatever, and I had to do the upgrade anyway. So I was just like, yeah, I'll do it now.
I've done upgrades in place on Fedora since like 31.
Yeah, 31. So I'm always on the fence.
Surprisingly well.
Oh, yeah, so it totally does, and I highly recommend it. The only reason I don't usually do upgrades is because I'm very close to the desktop experience and all that kind of stuff. Like I'm on the working group for it in Fedora land. I try to push for developer and sysadmin stuff.
Like proper screen sharing.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, it's one of the things on my list to do is actually to try to move all of the Fedora like workstations, even server, over to RDP and just get rid of ZNC altogether. Not ZNC, VNC. But so as a result, I tend to do a wipe reinstall because I want the brand new experience. So I want to know what it feels like when you first start it up. I want to I don't want to stomp on the new settings. I want to see what those are with my old settings. So if it's really a daily driver and all you're trying to do is get the latest version of stuff, in place upgrade, highly recommended. Works really, really well. It's super fast. But I just kind of have an unusual use case. So I tend not to do it.
Never.
But, yeah, exactly. All right. So groups, users, own files. And so to kind of continue on that same vein, the nobody user was introduced quite a number of years ago now. It is actually an official designation in actually kind of by way of extension. There is this, I always get the letters wrong. I think it's the LSF, the Linux, no, LFS, the Linux File System
Standard.
Yeah. Standard. And why is this interesting? Well, so if you go back to that remark that everything's a file, well, the Linux File System Standard would therefore be the complete definition of Linux, essentially.
And just as an aside, if you're not familiar with LFS, we talked about it on the last episode of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents. So let me grab that real quick.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah. And it's much like RFCs, where now I'm not finding the LFS like link to the actual thing. Just
it's actually surprisingly hard to find.
Weird.
Unless you like type in Linux file system standard, you're not going to get it, which is annoying.
That is weird. Yeah, like I found the Wikipedia page. But
yeah.
So we have that. But yeah, so
here it is. Hierarchical file system. That's FHS. That's weird.
Yeah, that's maybe, I think that's part of why I can never remember which way it goes. Because it's the, I think that's the right one.
I think that's what we used. Yeah, this is what I used last time. Okay, so yeah, this is the right thing. Let me, well, obviously, thank you. But I think this is it. Which means it has changed in name.
It hasn't. It's just weird. So yeah, so if you go to free desktop, that's where, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's a little bit hard to find. If you've ever tried to go find an RFC, that's not trivial either. So
actually, I'm really good at finding RFC for some reason. It's because I've had to tell so many vendors they're breaking them.
Right. If you could show me the amalgamation of how you can ratify that an email address is valid, using I think it's 7 different RFCs that all conflict and are inconsistent. Yeah, there's basically no way to actually determine if an email address is valid, as far as I can tell. So yeah. All right. So long story short, in that definition, there was this user that was conceived of, in a sense, called nobody, and has an associated group also called nobody, which is the user and group that a file is owned by if that user and that user and group,
take a drink or something real quick.
Yeah, right. That user and group is not present on the system, is the way it was defined.
Got it. So, and I'm sorry, whoever said man here, Rapscallion Reeves again with the awesome commands. Yes, that is 100% valid command, and it tells you in succinct detail what each directory does or is supposed to do on your particular system.
The man higher?
Yeah. As in hierarchical standard. So yeah, pretty cool.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and I bet that is different depending on what operating or what flavor of Linux you're on. Because this is where some of the distinctions come in, which is like one of the biggest challenges between the different distributions of Linux. Is actually significantly more about muscle memory than it is about actual differences. And so knowing where a file is one of the things that your muscle memory tells you. And then the other one is kind of like, how do you install or update software? You know, on the Debian flavors, right? You use something like apt-get, you know, and on the RHEL and Fedora, whatever, you use something like yum or DNF. And why the differences are there a lot of the time is just because you're used to one or the other. But so there's this nobody user, and the original idea behind it was that you have what are referred to in Linux land and formerly Unix land. I usually pronounce it as daemon, but technically speaking, if you read the letters, it's actually daemon. It's, I think, a little bit of a joke, but the idea is that basically things that are running in the background or things that are running all the time that you don't interact with, you're not attached to or whatever. So the idea was that those things could run as this nobody user. So then if they were compromised, you wouldn't be able to get anywhere because you didn't have any permissions, like general permissions on the system. Challenge is that as soon as you had 2 of those daemons running as nobody, then they can access each other, right? So that didn't work out terribly well. So what you ended up seeing is now you have this kind of nobody for almost like special use cases, and you have this, and then like Apache will have its own user, right? Or Nginx will have its own user. There are still some daemons that run as nobody. The example in the articles I was reading about were NFS, for example. but they're getting less and less common because of the problem of, if something is owned by nobody, then anyone logged in as nobody can, get to it.
Yeah.
You can't log into it as a human, but if you compromise the NFS bridge, for example, then you could access, some other thing that is owned by nobody.
Bingo.
So,
all right.
Long story short for that, when we talk about it in terms of containers, the reason I bring up nobody is because in a container, if you don't have privileges on the host system files that you have bind mounted into the container, the way it does that without, kind of breaking everything in Linux is by assigning the ownership of those files to nobody. The thing that I don't understand about this, and this is where I got a little confused, and maybe I will show you now.
Yeah, let's. DNS mass runs as nobody. That's a good point.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, like I said, I just saw, and the thing I was reading was the example was NFS. I didn't look too hard into other ones. I mean, I know there's definitely a few. I remember seeing it around. I just couldn't remember what all they were off the top of my head. So let's see. Sorry. All right. So as I said, I rebuilt my machine. So some of the settings are new and special. That is not the correct window. Where did it go? Here, window. Oh, this one. All right. And so the quick and easy example of this is, let's see if I get it in my scroll back. I do not. So, I think I have a cheat sheet. Hold on a second. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. But we'll just do this slightly more interactively than they have here. So this along with a bunch of other stuff is from various articles about rootless Podman. And I will put them in the further reading on the show notes, rather than kind of dropping. There's at least 4 that I have here, rather than kind of putting them in the Twitch chat. But
some commands in Twitch just don't work.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So as you see here, and let me know about the color, lightness, size of font.
I think it looks good, but folks, let us know as always.
Yeah, I
can't
try to
read or
remember
see
my
it.
settings.
Let us know. Yeah,
I think they are correct. But
so, are you using Wayland and Pipewire?
I am not using Wayland. I might be using Pipewire. I don't know actually. But I'm not using Wayland. Primarily, weirdly enough, my primary use case for not using Wayland is because I like clipboard history, and it is still not built into GNOME, even though I filed a bug about this.
Really?
Yeah. There is an extension for GNOME that will do it, and supposedly it actually works. And this is something I was going to experiment with. It's supposedly the one I have found recently works actually with Wayland. I just haven't tried it yet. And I also I need to experiment with like Zoom and Google Meet and all that stuff and see that
OBS just got an update yesterday, so it works in Wayland. So I'm hoping that Zoom does. Actually, I think Zoom did get updated, so it works in Wayland now.
Okay. Yeah, my other primary use case I hardly use anymore is what's it called? There is a tool in Linux that will take 2 computers and let you use like the 2 monitors or whatever, but it lets you use the keyboard and mouse going across them both.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like reverse KVM almost. Not KVM the virtualization, but KVM the support for multiple computers.
Virtual, whatever thingy.
Synergy, that's it. So Synergy, last I checked, also didn't work in Wayland, and I was using it a ton, but I am not using it very much anymore. So that may be a reason to stick with it. So what I did here was I mounted a directory into this container that should obviously have a bunch of privileged stuff and a bunch of stuff that's not privileged. So if I do And as per the docs, it was also talking about this. You're going to get a lot of errors doing this, so I'm just going to dump it to dev null. And so
Ooh, that's a lot
all
of
these files are
nobodies.
right, and so that's kind of what you expect.
So many nobodies.
Nobody's. So let me just see. So actually, let's use sudoers here, right? So, or sudo conf, right?
Okay.
And so
That's scary.
right, exactly. So if I do tester and then sudo conf, and I get permission denied. So that's cool, right? So currently, right, and you can see it in my prompt, but just in case, right, I do a who am I am root inside the container. I do an ID. That's how I'd find out what my UID is and my GUID.
Not good.
ID.
Yeah.
GID. This is really not coming out of my mouth. So you can see I am UID 0 and I am GID 0. So therefore I am the root user on the machine. One of the things that we didn't really mention, but root is not only special in that they can access all files, but the way they do this is a little bit of a hack in that they are ID 0 and GID 0. This if you look into C groups at all, and we talked about this a bit on the show with Dan Walsh some weeks ago, and basically that root power being tied to the number has resulted in things like providing capabilities, or what are called Linux capabilities, or sorry, kernel capabilities, I guess. Made them a little weird because there's a lot of things that just check for that number and then allow the operation. And if you have that ID number, then you can do it. But so this has caused, obviously, as you might imagine, some problems where you only want to give the user certain capabilities, but not others, but they also happen to have UID 0. So long story short there, the point being that this root thing is also a little weird, kind of like this nobody user. And this goes back to computers been around for a long time now, and they've evolved a lot as they've gone. So you've seen a little bit of evolution in this root user that was not accounted for in the original design, in a sense. So my point, in a sense, to WSL Corsair maybe is this root is not the same as the external root, and we have another cool little command which will show that in a second. But long story short, what I wanted to show off was that if I try to read this file, I get a permission denied, even though I am root user. Now, this is where it annoys me, and where I'm going to ask some people on Twitter to explain this to me. Because if I leave my container, I expect my nobody interactions to work the same way, right?
You would think.
So just to show you, I was fooling around with this yesterday, but I'm going to do it again just to kind of show you what I was doing. So if you do sudo and -u, you can provide a user, and I can, let's say, make a directory, because I thought maybe it was, excuse me, God. So if you notice, when I was doing this above here, right, it was under this tester. So I thought maybe, basically it was being able to walk the directory or something that was making it so that I was getting permission denied. Because if I do, actually, we'll start here. Let me do touch temp. Oh, unless it's because it's in temp. No, that shouldn't be it.
Do me a favor and clear some, move this command up to the top.
Oh, sure.
Hit enter a bunch or clear or whatever.
Yep. There we go.
There we go.
So I'm just gonna let's call it that, and type in my password, and then we're gonna say temp, and as you can see, everybody has read access, or sorry, not everybody, but so I have read and write access. My group has read only access, and the world has read only access. So we're going to take those permissions away, or most of them, by doing 0600. So this is an octal set.
Yep.
So, if you put in a 4, that's read. If you put in 2, that's write. If you put in 1, that's execute. So if you add those numbers together, that's how you get the number that you put in here. So this will give me read write on it and no privileges for the group
else.
or the world. Exactly.
Nobody group.
Which should be fine because I'm L white, right? So I have this group. And actually in ID, I don't think I realized this, but you can actually see the other groups I'm part of.
Yeah.
So I am not in the nobody group.
Right.
So
you're a nobody to nobody.
Exactly. So now if we ls it again, we'll see here, and we'll do this again.
Thank you.
We'll see that it's only read write for myself, should have no other permissions, right? So now let's just put something in it by doing nobody echo some text in the file, and we'll do temp. Really?
Which window?
Why is this not working? Oh, I know why. The substitutions, I think, get a little wonky. Oh, no, now it's not working for me. Did I give myself right? Yeah. All right. So, of course, is my experiment going to be totally foobar now? Because this was totally happening for me yesterday. All right, and so let's just do the ls again. All right, and then, all right, so we have that down there, and then, so this is where it's kind of interesting. So I did this, even though I did a -u as nobody, it actually created it as me, which I thought was odd, but you may have to do with substitutions.
I'm sorry, did you run do you need a -c? Is what Rapscallion Reeves just asked in chat.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. No.
I think
sorry.
Not the echo. Yeah. There you go.
No, it's -c. Is it? Wait. I thought it was -c too, but is it SSH-C? Not SSH.
You need the -c.
Yeah.
No quotation mark in front of echo because that's the command. And then you need to quote the text.
I thought that was what I needed, but then it wasn't working for me. So that's why I was playing around with it. Okay. No, see, it doesn't work.
Never mind.
Man, sudo, let's see, -c.
Quote. But Rapscallion Reeves says quotes before the chompy thingy.
Like this? Yeah, I think it's because we need sh or bash -c.
You might be getting sudo and SSH mixed up. Oh, that's entirely possible.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Hit enter a couple times.
There we go. Yeah. So eventually, yeah, I need the bash -c. And now if I do ls-l, so now this is owned by nobody. It has some content. So this is what we wanted, right? So change mod 0. Oh, need sudo. Sudo change mod 0600 temp to 5. All right. So now only nobody has read write on Tallulah 5, and we know it has some content. So as me, I shouldn't be able to touch that. Seems reasonable.
Right.
But if I do sudo, I also shouldn't be able to do it. Because going by, if we go way back here to inside the container.
Yeah, that's right. It failed last time.
Right. So we did a cat as root. We can't run sudo in the container because sudo is not installed.
Right.
But permission denied, right? Weird. So what I did was I was like, okay, so maybe it's the directory. And so let's say new dir, and then we're gonna sudo chown nobody temp new dir, and then we're gonna sudo change mod 0700. That's a lot of zeros.
Indeed.
Oops, I do that all the time. Okay, now if we do temp, we should see new dir here. No one has permission on it. It is a directory, and we have execute, right? So on a directory, you need execute permission to be able to go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. All right, so now let's do our command that took us like 87 tries.
Rounding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna make it a new number just to make sure we don't screw it up. All right. So now in theory, actually, let's do minus u.
You can do it. I believe in you.
All right, so there's a file there. It is got a lot of readership. So we're gonna take that away, just in case, even though we shouldn't be able to get there at all. So 0600 on, oops, what do we call it? Oh, TLU. Oh, and tab completion doesn't work, right? Because I don't have execute. So I ls it again. Okay, so it should be just read write, and we ls temp, and new dir is also got no access to it. And then if we, so let me try cat temp new dir TLUH6. Great, that's expected, right?
All right.
Let me throw sudo in front of that.
Desired.
Hold on.
Not desired.
What? I don't understand. It's not supposed to work. So I need to ask the internet, because I don't like the whole, like that whole story, right, was about using the nobody user inside the container makes it so that we can't access it from inside the container using root or any other user. But that's not how it works on the host system.
Right.
Which I was like, wait, what? So
isn't this just due to the namespace root? I.e., if you ran Podman as root with sudo, you should have the ability to read a nobody file.
So
maybe
that's what I expect. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let me
see. People are asking questions, and they're like, "Why don't? What? Yes,
right.
Why doesn't this work as intended? Right? Like,
right.
What's going on here?
Right. And so this, but kind of what we're talking about here, right, is the rootless Podman thing. So let's run this thing. Actually, let me throw a dash. Oh no, I do have one. So we're going to run this one with sudo, so as root. So, oh shoot, sorry, I forgot I don't have it downloaded.
Oh well, we'll watch it. We'll watch the container build.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even that; it's just a poll. All right, so now in tester should be the etc directory. So we'll test dir, and just in case, we'll throw this so we don't get a huge wash of error messages. But so the file we were mutzing with before, so if you notice, it's now owned by root and not by nobody.
Interesting. And that's because you logged in as root.
Right. So now if we do cat tester,
or you ran it as root, I should say, not logged in, but yeah.
Right. Sudo.conf, right? So that seems fine.
Okay.
As expected. So you can run it as root, and then all the file permissions are set for basically root ownership. And I should be able to actually modify those files. Is there something? Actually, I could just touch something, and that would be enough of a test. Just to oh, wait a minute. So I'm running it as root, and I have the directory, but I don't know if I have directory permissions or if I just have file permissions.
Well, what's the do a LSLD on the directory itself.
So tester, yeah, I don't have. Oh no, I have right.
You have execute and everything. So
this is where, yeah. So this is where some of those permissions I get a little hazy on, because I think, is there anything in Etsy I can mess with without actually breaking my computer? Let's look at. I should be able to just add a pound sign into. Let's just do sudo conf, because if I just add some, oops. If I just add something to the end here, yeah, so changing a read-only file, test of editing. Yeah, and I cannot write it. I don't know if you can see that at the bottom of the screen, but I get an error. So I'm going to exit out of that. So I can't actually modify any of these files, but I can read them. And this is where I start using like :Z, which will do the mounting. Basically, it'll match up the user ownership. So yeah, so it's all very weird. It's all Linux madness. Exactly.
Thank you, Chris.
So
I mean, it's fair. He was confused about where we were previously. It worked as desired in the container originally. It did not work as desired on the host OS. And now it's being weird in.
So now we're back in the container, but we ran it as a root full container. And so it's, working a little weirdly. I do know that if I do this, it will, I know why. It's because
SE Linux.
Yes, file system, right. So the file system permissions are letting us through, but SE Linux is not. So in theory, if I do sudo set, sudo set enforce 0, so turn off SE Linux.
You're making Dan Walsh cry as we speak.
Right. Then if I run my same test, I bet it will work. And sudo conf. Look at that. Test for, and look at that. I was able to write it. And if I now check that file, etc sudo dot, if I can type that file, oh, good God. I don't know if you can see it at the bottom here, but so yeah, my change took. So you have a bunch of different things interacting there, right? But yes, I don't know why this didn't occur to me earlier. But SE Linux, so while I have, so as you may or may not know, we talked about this on the show with Dan, SE Linux is kind of like an add-on security layer onto Linux, right? So this is why, for example, I think, does Ubuntu still doesn't have SE Linux, right? No. So Ubuntu, for example, doesn't have SE Linux because it can, because it's an add-on. They have a different tool that I think is called AppArmor that does same concept, different way, right? So it's an add-on which is then applying a secondary level of security onto our file system. And when I do set enforce 0, that turns it off. But we'll turn it back on to make sure that Chris's shirt is okay.
My shirt needs to be safe.
Right. So, but long story short, when I have it on, then when I'm inside the container, it's SE Linux that's blocking it. In fact, shouldn't we get a denial even? Wait, no, if I do it without that, it'll be less automatically. And then, what is it called? Audit? Problem is I'm going to have all my sudos in here too.
Oh, what did you do?
I went to the right.
Okay.
Just looking to see if I can see it in here quickly. So in theory, in here, there is an error message that says, oh, we didn't let you edit this file because you are an idiot and you shouldn't have tried to modify it. I think it's probably nicer than that, but you get the impression that's what they really mean. So actually, now I'm curious. Let's see, control semicolon?
No. Journal cuddle -xe is.
Yeah, no, I was looking for how do I do split pane in Tmux because I can never remember.
Oh, I have a Tmux cheat sheet over here. I think
I need a Tmux sheet. Yeah, easy for me to say. Splits. Vertical split. I want. I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so in theory, actually, can I do?
And you too can get this wonderful cheat sheet that I have for Tmux from opensource.com.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Check out all their cheat sheets. They're really good. Check out all their cheat sheets. They're really good.
There's also, oh, here we go. That's what I was looking for. Resize pane L.
Oh gosh, you're doing all kinds of Tmuxery today.
I know. Well, it'll be worth it.
Resize current pane, control B, control up down, or control left right.
Control. Oh, wait, so control B, then there we go. That's what I wanted.
There you go.
Ignore the error behind the curtain. So now if we do journal control minus B, is there something you think we can? Oh, what's the errors? Just look for errors. You just said it. XE.
Yeah.
Just XE.
Journal cuddle -xe, I think. Yeah.
Oh, actually, let's do -F. All right. So, what do you think? Is this going to work? Now we're going to do Podman run IT RM. And let me just grab the -V so I don't screw it up. And Fedora, and then bin bash. Yes.
I'm sorry to laugh at your pain, but Narindev just said today's Tmux Circus show performance powered by Langdon. Cue up your applauses.
Don't even start. Don't even start. All right. So
I mean, this is why I've kind of walked away from Tmux and screen, right? Like I will just background a process before I open Tmux.
Well,
right?
The thing is, I wanted to see if we could actually see the error in real time when we tried to do it.
Right.
So that, there's not a lot of, I didn't have a lot of choices there. I could go horizontal. Maybe that would be easier. But this should work. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Oh, that's reassuring. It's not even there.
That said permission denied.
Yeah, but I should be able
that's
to...
bad.
We were able to...
Wait. Everything's in tester, I thought, right?
Right. Oh, no, I'm supposed to be running as root. That's the problem.
Oh, yeah. See, look, all kinds of output now.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Narindev says he likes his Tmux with fish shell. That is.
I know he does. I still can't get the hang of it.
I use Tmux successfully very well with fish shell, to be honest with you. There's a Vim plugin that opens debugger output in a separate Tmux window, and I love it. What is that plugin? Because I would like to see that.
Okay, so let me go over here and hit enter. All right, so that's good. So all that stuff was basically us, doing sudo to run it, whatever. Mm-hmm. So, but in theory, now if I try to, more stuff, and then. Oh, that's interesting. I get the right on the append. I immediately get the error, and I don't get the error when I try to actually write it, which is weird. But whatever, that's just how VI works. It's not related to what we're talking about. But as you can see, it was blocked by SE Linux because we tried to access it, and we do not have rights on that file. Oops. Q bang, sorry. And then let's just do this. Oh, yeah. And then how do I kill the pane is X. No. Okay, so then back to this spot here. If we, what do I want to show now? So we get the SE Linux denial, but we had permissions on the file, right? When we did the when we just did an LS, we just looked like, it looked like we should be able to edit it, but we couldn't because we are root, and yet we cannot. And the reason is because SE Linux was blocking it underneath. Oh, that's what I was going to do. So if I do ls-lz, so capital Z shows me what SE Linux settings are on it. It's a system U, and if, let's just say for the sake of argument, let's say bind mount thing, and then we will copy, we can even copy sudo.conf into bind mount thing. Oh, no, I thought I could do that. And then let's change the ownership, sudo chown wait bind mount thing.
Plain Risky says time to make an audit to allow module to let you edit that file.
Exactly. I think it's probably a little bit more than I need. So now if I do, let's mount, actually I'm going to need to find the right buttons. Bind mount thing. I should have done MNT, and then I would have been able to type it a little bit better. So we're going to mount that into tester, which should give us access to it. We're going to use the :Z to tell it to relabel. Oh shoot, you know what? We're going to have to see. So if we do B%, let's look here, and we see bind mount thing. Let's look at LSZ bind mount thing. If you notice, this is an unconfined user object here in user home T. And if I look inside the directory, oh, that is actually inside the directory. And then if I do this, it's basically the same. But when I do, let's here, we'll get cool about it. What is it? Watch -N1, like that. Actually, let's do inside the directory. All right, so theoretically, we'll watch that change. And then if you notice, it changed to being a container T file. So SE Linux has relabeled it. And so now if I look in tester sudo conf, so this is one of the things I think is super interesting, right? So we just got done talking about the nobody user, which is supposedly the user that is used when the ID doesn't exist on the system. However, this ID does not exist on the system. That's why it's showing me 1,000, right? So, if I do cat etc password, 1,000 isn't here. So because it has no name, right? But it doesn't make it into nobody, which this whole thing, clearly this whole thing is like weirdly explained, right?
So it's almost like we need to bring on somebody like a Scott or
somebody, maybe just be somebody who explained how this works.
Tell us. Maybe Matt Messine could tell us, or anybody, right? Like, why?
I will say, when I proposed this show originally, I did say that we should really probably bring somebody on for this because it's going to be weird. But look at that. I can modify the file because it was relabeled. I'm over here pointing, which I know isn't helping anyone.
Right.
But, so it was relabeled as a container file T. So now I actually was able to edit the file.
Okay.
And if we do, oops. No, not that one. I want to kill this one. So if we relabel it or whatever. So, okay. I can't believe it. We're starting to run out of time. But this has been mostly about user IDs and like just regular old user IDs and group IDs. But to talk quickly about or should we do points and then talk quickly about
yes, points.
Okay. We do try to get them within the hour.
Yeah, people do have to duck out, I'm sure, at 10 o'clock. So
skip those meetings.
Yeah, you know. Tell them Chris Short said you could skip them.
Right, exactly. All right, so points for today. I do. I rebuilt my machine, so I had to redo, so I had to put back together my tools that calculate points. So if you see an error,
after explaining the point system to me last week, I feel like that is prone to error.
It's pretty automated. Basically, the challenge was just. I had built a container that runs the go get the spreadsheet from Google Cloud. But that container had a bug in it. It was missing a library. But because I already had it, it was one of those things where, I didn't do like a clean test on it.
Yeah.
It just needs a little bit of editing. I think it's fine now.
Okay.
But, just in case. So as you can see, Narendev has an awesome 5,600 points.
That is
I'm
impressive.
going to throw the code in the chat. Sorry, and then Netherlands Hackham with 5,300 points. Noah Friction, I think, must have missed last week, is only at 4,000 points. Joe Fuzz is still holding strong at 2,300 points. But Detective Konakudo is up and coming, as with Bacon Fork, 2,100 and 1,900 points respectively. And they are both ticking away. There should be some more escalators.
Is this the first time where the leaderboard has all been over 1,000 points or close to 2,000 points?
Yeah. We're getting up there.
Yeah. This is pretty wild. 36 episodes in.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We're really excited that you generally participate in these. They're kind of fun.
And we got word this morning that one of our legal hurdles has been
surmounted. Yes.
So eventually, still soon, hopefully.
Right, exactly.
Extrinsic value will become intrinsic value.
Other way around.
Intrinsic value will become extrinsic. Jesus.
Right. So TikTok. With any luck, Chris and I will actually see the swag before we are sending it out to all of you for your points.
Maybe.
But we are not holding our breath.
No.
So
you'll probably get it before we do somehow.
Yeah, exactly. It's going by the way this has gone. And what I think is particularly funny about this is actually Red Hat in general, when it comes to like swag and giveaways and stuff, is actually one of the better performing, I don't know what the right word is for this, in that I've worked with kind of in the industry at all ever. In general, it's really, really good. Oh yeah.
No, don't. No. So I don't want to have that discussion today.
Just as a kind of final note, this is really anomalous, and that's why it's really particularly funny for us with the show, is that it's so unusual. So I'm surprised that Chris doesn't actually have a block to filter out anything related to IRC, just in concept.
Right.
So
I liked IRC when it was new.
20 years ago?
Yeah.
No,
20
when
years
it was
ago.
New. Before that, like IRC's been around for a long time.
I know, but like in the 90s, it made sense. In 2021, I'm sorry.
When the competitor was ICQ and AIM.
Right. Yeah. Like, not that there's better options, but there's more options. Right. Like,
I need to be able to send those Giphies.
I know, right? Like, I like my messaging things with the ability to send images.
Right. So what was I about to say? So yeah, so points. Thank you for participating. We hope it will be as Chris said, as I often say, turning into extrinsic value very, very soon. But we essentially I think we've actually gotten over the last legal hurdle. We just have to we need to kind of
execute
the content.
Yeah,
just publish it. It basically landed it was this morning, right?
Like 7:30 this morning.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I couldn't remember if it was 7:30 this morning or 7:30 yesterday morning.
Yeah.
So very, very close. We really are this time. But that's the points. Going back to our regularly scheduled programming for just a moment, I wanted to kind of cut to the chase a little bit. Like what I was trying to give was the context of why that was the wrong window.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't anything useful, but it was the wrong one. I had grand plans of that being the right one, and it didn't work out that way.
The Rendev is freaking out over the fact that people still use IRC. He just discovered what it was.
Yes.
There's a whole
there's a lot of
going on right now.
Well, I
didn't
just
want to bring it up.
Yeah.
But
there's a whole story there. There's actually maybe I could throw the Ars Technica article in there, but there's a whole drama going on there right now. But IRC is actually a heavily used place for kind of the Linux open source community in general. So like Kubernetes, for example, uses Slack. But GNOME, they actually have their own IRC server, as well as they do a lot of chatting in Freenode, but whatever. But the long story short, that if you want to participate in an open source community, a lot of them are in IRC, and there are there's many IRC networks to choose from, right? And there's many IRC isms in the sense that like anything else in software, if it's been around for a long time, there's very strong, and strict is kind of the word I mean, but not quite, protocols and methods and like usage patterns, that kind of stuff. One might just call it manners in a sense, or is that what's the like proper term for manners? I'm blanking on the word. But there's basically this whole set of rules that you should follow when you are using IRC. Make sure you know what those are. What's that?
In my opinion, the fact that there's things like that, whatever.
Well, Slack has them too. They're certainly evolving.
Yeah, netiquette. Thank you, Rapscallion Reeves.
Yeah.
The fact that there's a netiquette that everybody has to learn before you even join or use something, that disturbs me.
Yes.
Right.
Like, you usually do get a little bit. You do get a little bit. Of grace period in a sense. Better than some.
It depends on the channel.
That's true.
I have gotten kicked out for asking a simple question from IRC channels before. That's documented. Get out.
Right.
That's super friendly. But yeah.
Anyways. So long story short, that's the story behind. Or some of the story behind IRC. There's a lot more to that story, but I don't remember why we were talking about IRC. But to talk about what we were talking about for the show, I will, in the further reading on the show notes, I'll put some links to some good articles about this. But the reason we were talking about it is because occasionally you will run into. Did I pull the link? Where'd it go? Occasionally you will run into. There it is. There is an error that you get, which I'm just going to try to grab it. Good God. That this.
Do I need to put on the music? The elevator music?
Exactly. So I just put it in the terminal window. So occasionally you will get that error from Podman. What this means is that you're basically inside your container, it's trying to use a bunch of different users to accomplish even just one, but it's trying to create a user in the container that has a particular ID. If that user ID is kind of not available for a large number of various different reasons, it's going to throw an error about trying to let you have access to that ID. So the way that Podman tries to fix this is by mapping those IDs basically to IDs that you have that are what are referred to as subordinate user IDs. So while I have my ID, which is 1000 on this particular computer, let's say I want to have a range of IDs that are available to inside the container, so I can have different users within the container. And so, just kind of by default, if we do, let's do the other one. Sudo doesn't really matter. But I'm hoping this will show what I mean. Not so much. I can't think of any great examples without like installing stuff. But the point being is that you'll log into a container and there'll be a bunch of different users there owning different files and stuff. So what you need is a way to map those users to like real users on your machine, on your host machine, if you want to operate on any of those files or any of that stuff. So in order to accomplish that goal, with all of the noise that we've just spent the last hour talking about, they've kind of created this concept called a subordinate user ID. Right. And one of the things that I found is that running into that particular error or errors like this should be getting increasingly unusual, because when am I doing this right? Yeah, here we go. So what I discovered is that it seems like a lot of the distributions are setting up this by default. And so what this is saying is set up this range of user IDs as subordinate IDs. That's what this brilliant sub UID is here, so that they're available to my user. However, that's excuse me, not always enough. So what you can do is you can modify it, and I just cut and pasted it to make my life a little easier, to make it so that I can expand that range and make that a bigger number, for lack of a better term. So now if I go in here, you'll see that I actually have a bigger range in theory, because it's going, I think, more to the left, right? So if we look at the man page, it's all right here. And basically it's like the start and then a count, right? So I guess now in retrospect, the example's not great, but so it's like I start here at whatever this is, 100,000. And go 65,000 after that, right? Whereas this one, it starts at 10,000 and goes 65,000 after that. So it's basically just kind of making a big range of UIDs that I can play with. You can do the exact same thing with the GUIDs, and I'll just show that, which I think the only syntactic different is that you say G here. And then we can see that I have these GIDs, yay, exactly the same. But the reason I wanted to kind of give all this context or whatever is because you will potentially see different and slightly subtle errors around the files you edit or around the containers you try to use or whatever, that are all related to this problem, where as your individual user, so my kind of L white user here, is just user ID 1000 and GID 1000. When I'm trying to run a container, I'm running all those processes, right? Just like I would be as if they were running locally, but I'm trying to create this kind of fictitious computer, which has a whole mess of other user IDs. So I need to make sure I can give them user IDs. And you also can see this cool command out of Podman, which I don't think I've even used, but it'll actually show you the users mapped to their host user and host group. So as you can see, I have this one. So I was running a container in the background, just basically for this example, called based on Grafana. And as you can see, there is a user inside the Grafana container called Grafana. It is of user group root inside the container. So in theory, if I do exec it c0f bin bash, and then do ps, you can see actually ps minus af maybe. I don't know how to get group out of PID, but the point is there's got to be a way, right? But so as you can see, it's running as user Grafana. If I look at user share Grafana, I bet it will be as root. And even if I do this, so it's of group root. And if you notice, it has read-only rights for group for anybody in the same group. Long story short, you can actually see that mapping of the users inside the container to the users and groups outside the container. This host user is one of those subordinate IDs. This host group is one of those. In this case, it's the same group. But you kind of see how it works. So like I said, I wanted to give a lot of context because this is one of those scenarios where you run into some weird errors, and they all are basically kind of from this problem. This, not that. That is
got really quiet all of a sudden, by the way.
Oh, my voice?
Yes, like you're further away from your mic.
Huh. Is that better?
There you go. Now it's better.
So the most common one that I've seen, and I even think we saw, I think what led to this is that we saw this on the show, was this one here, when you try to do a Podman pull and it's using an ID inside the container that is a privileged user. And sometimes when you run it, you'll get a similar one, but you'll get a couple of others too. So just if you see something about the IDs, it's related to the fact that you're trying to use these IDs in a kind of a non-normal way. And so you need these subordinate user IDs and group IDs. So let's wrap it up there.
Well, let's talk about next week real quick.
Yeah.
So next week, I'm out. I'm having my neckiotomy on my left side of my neck. We'll just call it that.
You'll be joining a frat.
No. Jesus. The show will be we'll still be here though, right? Langdon and Andrew are playing second fiddle to each other, I guess is one way to put it. Maybe, I don't know. Like, so Andrew, who hosts the show that comes up next on the channel at 11 a.m. Eastern, Ask an OpenShift Admin, will be hosting this show, and Langdon will be stepping in to host Andrew's show. So it'll be a Langdon and Andrew morning next week.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I will
much to everyone's chagrin.
Right. I will be here on Tuesday. I'll be here on Thursday, but Wednesday, I'm done. I'm down for the count. I'm like icing myself constantly, kind of thing. I should figure out how to do an ice bath on just my neck.
I think they call that a drowning, but it's not. You gotta be careful of that.
Anyways, so yeah, that's what to expect next week, and yeah, we'll worry about the week after that.
Well, so next week we do have a guest. So
yes.
On the show, we'll have Brian Cook will be here to talk about the Container Health Index.
Nice.
And Andrew will be here to help me talk to him. And then I will be joining his show. I'm not sure what he's covering that day, but it's more of a question-based show. So I think it's kind of a little bit what comes up from the audience, as well as kind of what comes up in his day-to-day life between now and then. So we will be talking about all the things there. The following week, obviously, or maybe not obviously, is Summit part due, as I saw somebody refer to it, or Summit, the second phase, which we've talked about on the show before, but is kind of more of the general sessions kind of components. So a little bit deeper dive, a little bit more things like roadmaps and stuff like that may be coming up about the various individual things that we do at Red Hat. So you should definitely go check that out. It's free. If you can't find it, I'm pretty sure it's redhat.com/summit.
I dropped a link to it in chat.
Oh, okay. So so Summit Part 2 is coming up. We will be dark that week, but then we'll be back the following week to give you a little recap of what we saw and thought was interesting. Hopefully you can share with us what you saw and thought was interesting. But yeah, so should be like, I'm really looking forward to the Container Health Index one next week. I've been trying to get that scheduled for quite some time, and it's something that I think doesn't get anywhere near enough publicity about, which is something we do and offer around our content. And from a little bit of conversation with Brian previous to this, hopefully we'll also be talking a little bit about some other places that it might land, or where that experience can kind of be enhanced and that kind of stuff, which I think will be interesting.
Nice.
Cool. But I think, is that all we wanted to cover? Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
As always, ask us questions, let us know in Discord.
Yeah. Feel free to ping us in Discord anytime. I actually have it set up so it will ping me during off hours. That doesn't mean I'll respond necessarily, but if you have an urgent question, I will respond.
Right.
So yeah, thank you very much for tuning in today. Thank you, Langdon, for our journey through the illustrious bits and pieces of
I don't think I ever realized how complicated it is, and then how like you really are doing this kind of weird anomalous thing in a container. And so I think it's important to kind of understand what you're doing, so then you can kind of extrapolate the solutions when you run into some of the problems that you run into.
Exactly. So thank you all for tuning in. As I said, join us for Ask an OpenShift Admin here at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We will be talking about Alert Manager configuration and customization. So all you people with Kubernetes clusters that want to get alerts when things go bump in the night, please tune in. And we will talk about Prometheus and all the fun things that it brings to the table. Until then, stay safe out there, folks.